Good evening, everybody. This is Jeff Brown in Beijing, another Radio Sinoland program. This is a very special edition because I'm pleased to announce that starting around July 1st, my first article on a new series on the Greanville Post is going to be published. And it's a wonderful cooperation with the guys and gals at the Greanville Post. I'm very happy about it. And so I'm going to read the first one to put on SoundCloud. This one is called Hong Kong. Happy Dragon Boat Festival on June 20th. Happy Summer Solstice on the 22nd. The first European ship launched on China's shores in 1513. The story goes that they lied through their front teeth to take advantage of Oriental hospitality, claiming a damaged ship and severe illness, neither of which was true. Pope Gregory XIII would not correct the ever-drifting Julian calendar for another 69 years in 1582. Yet before the European colonialists' arrival, China had and continues to use its own very sophisticated lunar and solar calendars going back about 4,000 years, around the time Abraham was making his way across the Fertile Crescent from Sumer to Palestine. Chinese calendars know nothing of the Julian and Gregorian time units like June, Saturday, Monday, and the 20th and the 22nd of the month. The Dragon Boat Festival, which dates back to 100 to 700 years before Christ, depending on which region of China celebrates it, is marked on China's lunar calendar. The summer solstice is one of the 24 points on the solar or agricultural version. Like these intertwined ancient time chronicles, in order to appreciate and understand China, you must know a little bit about its long, illustrious history. The impact of Euro-American Japanese colonialism on China reached its nadir during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It took the communists to finally liberate and modernize New China from 1949 until today. Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping brought their people from the cruelty and misery of Western colonialism to China's rightful place as an economic titan on the world stage. Xi Jinping is melding their two starkly different visions into his own, called the Chinese Dream, so that his citizens can continue to stand tall, proud, and independent from foreign exploitation. But there were and are some historical blemishes on China's modern narrative. Taiwan was created with the help of the United States to serve as an anti-communist rebel Chinese province. Then there are Hong Kong and Macau, former colonies of dying Western capitalism. There are also the Diaoyu Senkaku Islands, given, so to speak, to the Japanese by Richard Nixon just 6 months before his historic trip to Beijing in 1972. The many conflicting South China Sea claims are a legal matter that should be decided by the United Nations International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, also known as ITLOS, I-T-L-O-S. But Uncle Sam's pathological imperial meddling off China's shores is making any proper ITLOS judgment impossible. Last week, Hong Kong's Legislative Council, which is called LegCo, which is a unicameral legislature, refused to pass a law that would allow all Hong Kongers to vote under universal suffrage for the territory's chief executive, or governor, in 2017. The candidates running would be chosen by Hong Kong's current electoral committee, and this was a deal breaker for Hong Kong's American-manipulated NGO, quote, Democrats. If you were in front of the Great Western Firewall's mainstream media propaganda foghorn, you would almost think that China is gunning down these so-called Democrats in the streets. The West ignores China's and Hong Kong's history for a reason, because the truth lies there for all to see. Hong Kong's LegCo members, from its colonial founding in 1843, were totally under the iron fist control of London, as was the governor. Hong Kongers were not citizens. They were vassal subjects of the British Empire and had few to no rights, except for wealthy local families and their compradors who lorded over the local 99%, like Ellis, the Lackersteins, and Yu Po Kien in George Orwell's semi-autobiographical novel Burmese Days. Orwell's characters called the locals niggers, who were economic slaves and treated as such, Hong Kongers included. I call these people the dreaded other. Andrei Vlecek calls them unpeople. Both appellations are from the standpoint of white Western privilege. The same is true today as yesteryear. From my hopeful and respectful point of view, I call all the world's dark-skinned peoples the moral majority, or the 80%. The constant repression and official violence needed in Orwell's colonial Burma to keep the niggers on their knees was used in Hong Kong as well. Human dignity would regularly boil over and try to free itself from the boot heel of colonial fascism. In 1925-26, Hong Kong was almost destroyed by a mass exodus of locals to the north into Guangdong, which you might know as Canton, in China. For 16 months, Hong Kong's courageous, oppressed 99% went on strike and created their own boycott, divestment, sanction, or BDS, movement in protest over the massacre of more than 60 fellow brothers and sisters who were gunned down like dogs on Shanghai's and Shamian streets by British brown shirts. Hundreds more were injured and many thousands imprisoned. After the popular pilgrimage north, BDS'd Hong Kong literally became a Twilight Zone ghost town. Only a loan, and of course being good capitalists it was not a grant, to Hong Kong's 1% treasury prevented its opium and morphine-fueled colonial economy from imploding. Britain's Hong Kong police state was able to keep Orwell's niggers in their, quote, proper place until these 99% were inspired by China's liberating communist and socialist revolution. Like their soulmates to the north, Hong Kong's dreaded other also wanted to free themselves from the shackles of Western colonialism and imperialism. So they rose up in violent protests in 1956, 1966, 1967, 1981, 1982, and 1984. Through all this, hundreds of Hong Kong's unpeople were killed and injured, while thousands were arrested. Martin Luther King Jr. observed, quote, "A riot is the language of the unheard," unquote, which is true whether you are American or Chinese. Except for Hong Kong's privileged white people and their wealthy local compradors, such was the reality of life for the colony's 99%. Although behind the Great Western Firewall, the world's former drug depot was and is vaunted as a halcyon utopia of unfettered free trade and unregulated capitalism. Thus, when Margaret Thatcher came to the negotiating table with Deng Xiaoping and China's communists in 1984, it was not out of altruism or a sense of justice. She and London were desperate to unhinge themselves from Hong Kong's ignominious 140-year Burmese Days history. They were sitting on a powder keg of anti-British hatred, and they knew it. These negotiations went on for years and became what is known as the Basic Law, which came into effect in 1997. Relative to the aforementioned LegCo's vote not to allow universal suffrage for the chief executive in 2017, four basic Basic Law tenets are germane. First, Hong Kong was reunified with the People's Republic of China in 1997. In other words, it is 100% under the jurisdiction and control of Baba Beijing, my wry appellation for China's communist leadership. Point number two. With Hong Kong now an integral part of communist China, Baba Beijing promised not to introduce Chinese socialism into Hong Kong for a period of 50 years or until 2047. Baba Beijing is scrupulously respecting this and calls it one country, two systems, with the proviso that the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of the one country takes precedence over the two systems. Until Hong Kong's phony fifth column umbrella revolution was hatched by Uncle Sam in 2014, Baba Beijing had no reason to be concerned about this caveat. Point number three. There is the possibility, but not the guarantee, of universal suffrage for the election of the chief executive starting in 2017. The key verb here is can be, which is conditional, not will, which is certain. And point number four, in the Basic Law, Article 158, most importantly, the final interpretation of the Basic Law is vested in the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, whose power is derived from the Constitution of the People's Republic of China. China's NPC Standing Committee is 100% Communist Party and Socialist. In other words, Baba Beijing makes the final determination on all of Hong Kong's laws and regulations in perpetuity. Go to Tiananmen Square, face west, and see that big building there? Well, that's where they work. Under the watchful eye of the Western mainstream media, the British finally allowed the first ever LegCo elections via universal suffrage in 1991, after being shamed into having indirect LegCo elections in 1985 and 1988. This would never have happened if the colonial Brits did not have China's Basic Law hanging over their heads after 140 years of dictatorial rule. These LegCo elections have continued successfully until now. There are two broad camps in the LegCo, pro-Beijingers and pan-Democrats. As a result of the latest 2012 election, the pro-Beijingers hold a solid majority, with 43 of the 70 LegCo seats and 400 of the 507 district or neighborhood councils. Their platform: Chinese nationalism and socialism, conservatism a la Confucius and Lao Tzu, and economic liberalism a la Deng Xiaoping. If the Hong Kong citizenry does not like this platform, they can vote for the pan-Democrats, whose platform is direct social and radical democracy and social liberalism. The people have spoken. The pan-Democrats got their butts whipped by the pro-Beijingers in a free and fair election. Thanks to the Basic Law, Hong Kong selects its chief executive just like the United States president, using the indirect voting process called an electoral college or committee. Hong Kong's electoral committee is composed of 1,200 representatives, and just like the United States, they are chosen by the powers that be. In the U.S., it's the Democratic and Republican wings of the Unitary Corporate Party, and in Hong Kong it is status quo establishment lobby groups such as tourism, medicine, finance, insurance, labor, real estate, social welfare, etc., 38 in all, who pick their electoral committee members. Baba Beijing is comfortable with Hong Kong's LegCo and district council direct elections because they closely resemble China's local elections at the village level. China's 1 million villages vote for their leader, mayor, as well as their local People's Congress by secret ballot. And for Hong Kong's chief executive, Baba is comfortable with its election committee because in China, national, provincial, prefectural, and township congresses are elected similarly via indirect vote, as is America's president. Baba Beijing knows that Hong Kong's sober, hard-nosed electoral committee is never going to allow a fifth-column candidate to be chosen who might try to destroy the Basic Law Treaty, turning Hong Kong into a color revolution bloodbath. Equally, the United States knows its electoral college is never going to allow a socialist or a communist to have any serious chance of becoming president. Cornelius West said, quote, "Obama was selected before he was elected," end of quote. You can go all the way back to George Washington. Nothing has changed. As a backdrop to all of this, the United States has spent untold billions of dollars relentlessly and pathologically trying to bring down communist rule in China via the U.S. military, CIA, NSA, and NGOs using Tibet, Xinjiang, Vietnam, Burma, Kyrgyzstan, Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, North and South Korea, Australia, the South China Sea, and more recently in Hong Kong. And you can search any of those references at www.44days.net for well-researched articles on this subject. Baba Beijing continues to counterattack these aforementioned acts of war, as well as studying assiduously the same Western modus operandi in the Ukraine, Russia, Georgia, Moldova, Chechnya, Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, Serbia, Macedonia, Iran, Libya, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Egypt, Tunisia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nigeria, Malta, Sudan, South Sudan, Venezuela, Ecuador, Cuba, Argentina, Bolivia, and if you include Europe's ongoing Secret Service Gladio Army, Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, Belgium, Greece, the UK, and on around the planet during 500 years of Euro-American colonialism, which all intensified post-World War II into anti-communist zealotry. Baba Beijing understands that Hong Kong's ersatz American-manufactured, financed, and orchestrated umbrella revolution, also called Occupy Central, is all about spurning Hong Kong's 2012 LegCo and District Council popular vote, which was for a solid pro-Beijing majority, while trying to subvert Hong Kong's basic law in order to destabilize and eventually overthrow China's Communist Party. This so that the West can balkanize and control the People's Republic of China. Baba Beijing knows that the United States, its vassal countries, and their 1% compradors around the world lust for the glorious colonial days of Orwell's powerless niggers to extract and profit usuriously from the dreaded others' precious natural resources, just like it did in China for 110 years during what the Chinese bitterly call their century of humiliation. Baba Beijing is not going to let Hong Kong be turned into another fascist hellhole like the Ukraine. Thanks to strong national leaders like China's Xi Jinping, Russia's Vladimir Putin, Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, Ecuador's Rafael Correa, Argentina's Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, Bolivia's Evo Morales, Cuba's Raul Castro, Nicaragua's Daniel Ortega, Eritrea's Isaias Afwerki, and others, the hyenas of Western Empire, for the first time in 5 centuries, have a real down and dirty global fight on their genocidal hands. Here's to hoping the dark side finally loses in the 21st century, spectacularly. The survival of a free humanity depends on it. Thank you and good night.